Greetings everyone, and welcome to today's Halloween Horror Review, courtesy of yours truly, Zaranizarak. So, we've had some pretty good selections so far, I think. I hope that you guys have been enjoying them, and I try to make them different from what everybody else is talking about all the time, because, why would I talk about the same stuff that everybody else is talking about? That's just boring. I mean, how much more can be said about the Evil Dead movies being awesome, for example? Although I did do some videos about the Evil Dead. If you search through my old videos, you can find that. And, stuff like that. I like to mix things up a little bit. Ever since I started doing these Halloween videos, I like to mix things up. So, just waiting to hear the call of Sam. There we go. Alrighty, let's head on down to the crypt and see what Sam has picked out for us today. Hey Sam, how's it going? So, again, pretty good pick with last time. Dario Argento's Trauma. Good stuff. I hope more people find the joy in it that I did. Well, the joy and the horror, of course. So what have you got for us today? Oh, wow, a double bill. A double bill Blu-ray fest. And I'm guessing the theme is horror movies based on comic books. Well, I don't know what I can say about them that, would serve as an intro, so let's just see what they are. We have Keanu Reeves in Constantine. Now, I know some of you may not strictly classify this as horror, but I think it's the genre that fits it the closest. I mean, for God's sake, he's fighting demons and there's blood and guts all over the place, so we'll just call it horror. And 30 Days of Night. Two excellent comic book adaptations on Blu-ray. Well, maybe not that excellent. Well, anyway, we'll talk about that in the rest of the video. So, yeah, two horror movies based on comics on Blu-ray today on the Multimedia Chronicles. Welcome back. Okay, so Blu-ray double bill of horror movies based on comic books. Today we have 30 Days of Night and Constantine, in case you just tuned in. Well, which shall we begin with? Well, Constantine's in my hand, so let's begin with Constantine. I know some people say, no, it's pronounced Constantine, not Constantine. Yeah, well, okay, we're talking about the movie, and in the movie, it's pronounced Constantine. There's like one guy in the extras who pronounces it Constantine. Everybody else in the movie and in the extras pronounces it Constantine. Potato, potato. You know what that reminds me of? Is there was this guy who was in my grade 9 history class many, many moons ago who was a big comic book fan, as was I. It was like the only thing we had in common. Otherwise, I really couldn't stand the guy. But he was a big fan of Alpha Flight, which was a Marvel superhero comics team that was, a superhero team comic, rather, that was just kind of starting up at the time. And the leader of Alpha Flight was named Vindicator. But he insisted that it was pronounced Vindicator. Vindicator? Could you possibly come up with a more pretentious pronunciation for that name, which is obviously pronounced Vindicator, meaning one who vindicates and practices the fine art of vindication? It just struck me that he was trying to make it like that simply to have the feeling that he was in on something that everyone else was completely in the dark about, when really he just didn't know how to pronounce things properly. Anyway, Constantine. I, of course, have read some of the comic books. Not all of them. Well, there's so many now, but mostly my experience with Constantine has been his guest appearances in other comics. The first ever thing I ever read that had John Constantine in it was, I think it was the second or third issue of Sandman by Neil Gaiman. where Sandman met up with John Constantine and helped him recover his bag of dream sand. And that was my introduction to the character. And even just from that one story, I just thought he seemed like a really interesting character, and I wanted to learn more. So a few years later, I read most of Original Sins, which is the collected trade paperback edition of the first few issues of Hellblazer, which is, of course, John Constantine's solo comic. And then just a few years ago, I, of course, was reading Swamp Thing, which was actually John Constantine's very first appearance, was in as a recurring guest character in Swamp Thing. And I guess fan response to that character was so great that they decided to spin him off into his own series. Anyhow, here we have the movie with Keanu Reeves, essentially adapting the character for the screen. I was really excited when I heard that they were doing that, because I thought, oh, cool, what a interesting character, and like just so much potential for a screen adaptation. And they took some creative license with the character, to say the least. I mean, first off, in the comics, he's British and blonde. Keanu Reeves is neither British nor blonde. And actually, they talk about this a little bit in the extras, how they sort of went about adapting the comics, and said basically they wanted to sort of be true to the essence of the character, and I think in that respect they were. But in terms of the specifics, the nitty-gritty details, they felt that Keanu would do a great job as the character, even though he's not British. And, I think they did some tests with him dyeing his hair, or tried it in computer maybe, I don't know. Anyway, they somehow tried it out to see how he would look with blonde hair, and it just didn't suit him. And they really wanted him for the role. So they essentially decided not to bother, and they tried, with a bit of a fake British accent, and well, if you've seen Bram Stoker's Dracula, you know how well Keanu can do a fake British accent. Yeah, no. Even though I think Constantine is more of sort of a Cockney accent, if I'm not mistaken. It's not like sort of prim and proper British, as it were. Anyway, personally, I enjoyed the film. I thought it was a lot of fun, and the one thing that I really enjoyed was the appearance of Peter Stormare as Lucifer towards the end of the film, because he was like one of the sort of sleaziest and creepiest and just scary versions of the devil I think I've ever seen put onto film. Now, I'm not a particularly religious person myself. I know a lot of my friends are, but I myself am not. However, I've always really found the mythology surrounding the Christian stories and the Bible stories and everything really interesting. I just like mythology in general. So for me, while I'm not particularly religious, I do find the stories of the various religions out there quite fascinating. And in this case, we have some interesting twists on them. A very interesting twist on the Archangel Gabriel, who is portrayed more sort of androgynous and is actually played by a woman in the film. And I have to say, played very well by this particular female actor in the film. Yeah, very, very great characterization there. And Keanu himself, I mean, he's fine. I mean, he's Keanu being Keanu. I mean, let's face it, he's not an actor that has tremendous range, but I think he pulls off the character just fine. I mean, he's a sympathetic character. He has his own problems. He's got lung cancer because of years of chain smoking, and that's right out of the comics. I mean, sort of therein lies the irony, is like he spends all these years fighting demons and the forces of heaven and hell, and the one thing that's doing him in is a cigarette, is lung cancer. So if you're curious about the Blu-ray edition here, this is not the extended version that appeared on DVD a little while ago. This is the theatrical cut. However, as I think I mentioned in the intro there is 18 minutes of deleted scenes on here, including an alternate ending, which, did I watch that one? Yeah, I think I did. I think I watched the alternate ending. I don't remember what happened in it, though. Sorry. I've been watching a lot of movies back to back over the past few weeks, and some of the finer details have kind of been washed aside for the broader strokes. So let's take a quick look at what we got here for special features. We again have this whole in-movie experience thing. As you view the movie, director Francis Lawrence leads an interactive exploration of the story, character, stunts, and filmmaking process. You know, that's interesting. That's different. That's sounds kind of like I've not watched that particular feature yet, but that sounds kind of like what they did with the Watchmen director's cut Blu-ray, where they had Zack Snyder come in occasionally and like share insights on the making of the film. So sounds very similar to that. And that kind of feature that runs during the movie, I don't mind, because it tends to have a lot of content to it, and it's not just a few featurettes thrown in there. There's more to it than that. It's almost like an interactive commentary, but with visual aspects to it. So that sounds pretty interesting. And then in addition to that, we have 18 minutes of deleted scenes, including alternate ending, 2 commentaries, one with director Francis Lawrence and producer Akiva Goldsman, and the second one with the screenwriters Kevin Broadbent and Frank Capello. Then we have featurettes, Channeling Constantine, Conjuring Constantine, Director's Confessional, Collision with Evil, Holy Relics, Shotgun Shootout, Hellscape, Visualizing Vermin, Warrior Wings, Unholy Abduction, Constantine's Cosmology, Foresight, The Power of Pre-Visualization, Demon Face, Writer's Vision, A Perfect Circle, Passive Music Video, and theatrical trailers. Holy guacamole, Batman, that's a lot of extras. So, yeah, if you're a fan of the movie, you will not be let down by that extras package. Yeah, I really didn't know what to expect with Constantine. I knew that a lot of hardcore fans of the comics were less than impressed with it, but personally, I enjoyed it. I mean, and I don't have an intimate familiarity with the Hellblazer series or the other solo Constantine stories, but I do have a familiarity with the character, and to me, it seemed like a pretty faithful representation of the character, and just a good old-fashioned supernatural action horror flick. You know, there's a lot of great, there's some really interesting and scary demon characters in it. You have the whole heaven versus hell thing, and even there's a lot of gray areas and such, and I don't know. I think it was just an entertaining take on some very old mythology, and yeah, I enjoyed it. So Constantine gets my seal of approval. So then we go on to 30 Days of Night, which I totally went in cold. Cold, yeah, get it, Alaskan winters, yeah. Anyway, I know it's based on a graphic novel, actually a series of graphic novels. This basically adapts the first one. And I have not read them, so I don't know. However, I was somewhat familiar, at least, with the artist's work, Ben Templesmith, who, of course, did the artwork for the original Dead Space miniseries. And I really liked that a lot. But I guess that doesn't really matter, because we're not looking at a motion comic, we're looking at a motion picture based on the comic. Anyway, that was essentially the extent of my experience with 30 Days of Night, i.e. not much. I had flipped through some issues of the comic on the stand, but I'd never actually read them. I'd heard a lot of good things about this particular movie, and there's just something about horror movies set in winter and snow that have always appealed to me. Maybe it's because The Thing, John Carpenter's The Thing, has always been one of my all-time favorite movies. Maybe it stems out of that. I don't know. There's just something about snow that adds an extra layer of mystery, and maybe it's just the appearance of desolation and the fact that the snow hides everything underneath it. You just see, instead of, say a summer's day in a field where you see flowers and leaves and grass and plants and stuff, you just see this blanket of white. So there could be anything lurking under that. To me, that's a very scary concept. So in the case of 30 Days of Night, it takes place in a small Alaskan town, basically, where once a year things, winter hits and the sun dips below the horizon and stays there for 30 days. Apparently, in actuality, it's not quite as depicted in the film. It's not literally 30 days of night. They do have a little bit of sunlight. It's just not like full-blown day like it normally is. But, yeah, so anyway, for the sake of the story, we'll just say that it's dark all the time. So that's cool. So I like the fact that, here we have something set in a snow environment, and then it's going to be nighttime all the time. So essentially what happens is, a small town in Alaska, the sun dips down, and this pack of vampires shows up that basically just starts to lay waste to the town. And so begins the horror. Um, yeah, I mean, concept-wise, I really like that idea. Just the whole idea that, here's a thing where an environment where vampires could really thrive, at least until all the townspeople are dead, of course. And I mean, even the head vampire insists, like, make sure you don't accidentally turn anybody. Like, we don't want more vampires. We just want to feast, and then we'll move on. But some great performances in there. I mean, Josh Hartnett I've always enjoyed. I think the first thing I ever saw him in was Black Hawk Down, and I really liked him in that. And I haven't really watched any of his sort of comedy movies, but I do enjoy his serious roles. I think he can add a lot of I don't know, intensity to his roles. Melissa George I had never really seen in anything before, so she was new to me, but she was quite good. I really liked what is his name? Doesn't list him on the back here, I don't think. Anyway, we have Ben Foster in this, who, of course, I really liked in Pandorum and in the 2004 Punisher movie. He plays basically the Renfield character in this, which was, quite funny. Very, very, like, slimy, drooly, just gross character. Anyway, the actor who played the lead vampire in this, was it Danny Houston? I think it was Danny Houston. Anyway, the actor who played the lead vampire in this I thought was really good. Very creepy and scary. Very effective performance. Now, that said, as much as there were a lot of elements that I liked in this movie, there were, I don't know what it was. It was just sort of one of those movies that I feel was missing something. You know what I mean? It's like there's a movie you see, you like it, but it doesn't quite, there's just something missing. You just can't put your finger on it. I basically just said the exact same thing twice. And 30 Days a Night was kind of like that for me. Like, I wanted to like it a lot more than I did, because all the elements were there for a real, winner kind of piece. I think it's because I found some of the characters annoying, and they just kind of like stumbled into their deaths, and it was pointless and stupid, and as soon as certain situations, without giving anything away, certain situations occur where it's like, as soon as the situation begins to take shape, you're just like, yeah, that guy's going to die. Just kill him and get it over with, and let's get things moving again. You just know. So there's a couple of moments like that in there. Maybe that was it. Maybe there's just, do we need these stupid characters, really? Is this really necessary to drive the plot forward? I don't know, whatever. But I guess some things aren't meant specifically to drive the plot forward, but rather to be little set pieces that stand on their own. But I don't know, whatever. I didn't even... Whatever. I don't know what more I can say about that. But anyway, overall I enjoyed it. I guess my thing about it is it just wasn't quite as scary as I was expecting. Given all the elements that were in place, I felt it could have been and should have been scarier. But yeah. But I did like the design, the unique and different design on the vampires. The best description I heard of them was they're very shark-like. Think of them as sharks, but like sharks that operate on land, and they just rip you to shreds. I mean, these were brutal, brutal vampires, and they did some really cool makeup effects, and I think a little bit of CG enhancement after the fact to make them a little more, I don't know, alien or whatever. So in terms of extras on here, we've actually got a decent little package. We have an audio commentary with Josh Hartnett, Melissa George, and producer Rob Tapert. That's kind of interesting. No director. So it's like the two lead actors and the producer, but no director. I've heard a few commentaries like that where for some reason the director's just incognito. Go figure. The director and everybody else does show up quite a bit in the production featurettes, though. So we also have Blu-ray exclusive 30 Images of Night, a graphic novel to film comparison photo gallery. So that shows you at least how, in terms of the visual style, they really, I think, successfully captured the look of the comic in live action. Of course, the comic is done in a very, like Ben Templesmith's art style is very stylized. And I don't know why my voice is cracking so much. And of course, obviously, you can't really translate that verbatim into live action, but I think it's as close as it possibly can be. And there are certain images and certain shots in there that do appear to be pretty much identical to what you see in the comic, so that's pretty cool. Then you do have 8 behind-the-scenes featurettes, pre-production, Building Barrow. Barrow is the name of the town, by the way. The Look, Blood, Guts, and the Nasty Shit, Stunts, The Vampire, Night Shoots, and Casting. Now, the featurettes kind of vary in length, but there's maybe about an hour's worth of stuff there total. Not bad. I watched all of those, and I actually found the making of the film really interesting. I mean, it was obvious that everyone involved was very serious about making a decent adaptation of the comic, and took their characters very seriously. Same with Constantine, actually. Like Constantine, they obviously did their research and just tried to distill it down to the core elements and be true at least to the spirit of the comics, even if they weren't being completely faithful. I mean, as with any long-running comic, it's a big story, and you can't just adapt the comic verbatim to the screen. You have to kind of take elements and put it together and just try to get the essence of it on screen. And, from what I know of Constantine and from what little I know of 30 Days of Night, these two appear to be successful adaptations in my books, And I say that at least as a fan of Constantine. Like, I enjoyed the film, and I would watch it again. And 30 Days of Night, I would like to read the graphic novel, and then I will watch the film again. I do not have 30 Days of Night Dark Days. Now, that is the name of the second volume of the comic as well, so I'm assuming that the second movie is an adaptation of that. I've heard that that particular one, however, is nowhere near as effective or well done as the first one. I'll probably pick it up if I can get it for like $5 at some point, just for completion's sake and for morbid curiosity and to give you my take on it. Maybe there's some good to be found there. Who knows? I won't know until I see it. Anyway, 30 Days of Night and Constantine. Check them out if you haven't already. I enjoyed them. Maybe you will too. Whew! This is going to be an epic length one, isn't it? I've already been going for almost 20 minutes. Okay, let's take a quick look at the packaging of both of these bad boys, and then we'll come back for goodbyes. Okay, in alphabetical order, 30 Days of Night and Constantine. Let's take a look at 30 Days of Night first. So we have the front cover there, quite nice. 30 Jours de Nuit, which actually translates exactly to 30 Days of Night. There you go. So a French translation, it is actually pretty much identical. So there you go. So as you can see, we do have a fair number of special features, which I've covered in the review, of course. But then if we open it up, I should mention this is one of those cases with the snap thing on it, but what I've been taking to doing is clipping it in so that it's closable like that. Yeah, because I don't like those. I don't like them. So there, of course, we have the disc art, and this is kind of interesting. I got this ad for more Blu-rays. Like that. Watch your world turn blue. But then there's another version of it here, which has French on it as well as English. So it's like they gave me the American version and the Canadian version, and they're both slightly different. Let's see, the back, the front. They're almost identical, but slightly different. Anyway, fascinating, I'm sure. So here, of course, we have the inside with Josh Hartnett and Melissa George. So then, of course, for Constantine, we have the front cover. Now, this is not the extended version that appeared a little while ago. This is just the theatrical version. However, in the extras, you'll notice we have 18 minutes of deleted scenes, which I'm pretty sure is everything that was put into the extended version, just shown separately rather than incorporated back into the film. But quite a huge list of extras on this, just absolutely massive. Very cool indeed. And then the spine, just English, very nice. Like that. So let's open her up. Just a standard keep case here, and that's it. That's about as plain Jane as it gets. Yeah. So we do have the a nice selection of extras there, but in terms of swag, there's basically nada. And there you go. That's the packaging. Yeah, pretty straightforward. You know, a couple of Blu-ray keep cases with inserts. Woohoo! Anyway, that's it from me to you for now. So until next time, which, if all goes according to plan, will be very shortly, so stay tuned. Yeah, thanks for watching, and sayonara. Oh, one brief thing I forgot to mention, how much I got them for. Both of these were actually recently on sale. Walmart had a very short sale where they had basically a bargain bin of Blu-rays for $8 a piece. And, well, both of these were in the bin. And I thought, hey, these are both ones I've been wanting to check out. Halloween's just around the corner, seems like a good time. So, yeah, I grabbed them. $8 a piece. Not too shabby.